Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, the podcast that explores the life-changing potential of solo travel, intentional travel, and location-independent working. Whether you're an aspiring digital nomad or simply want to boost your confidence through epic travel experiences, I'm here to motivate and inspire you to go after all your wildest dreams. I'm Jessica Grace Coleman, author, travel transformation coach, founder of Flip the Script Travel Transformation Services, and your host for the Travel Transformation Podcast. Travel changed my life. Now let's change yours. You ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation. My guest today is Claire Burt, a certified meaningful travel coach, project specialist, and founder of Your Travel Analyst, helping tourism businesses and educators bridge the gap between the logistics of travel and the human experience. Claire helps travel companies elevate their products and services such as books, courses, presentations, and training programs in a meaningful way. Drawing upon her formal education in tourism and travel services management, as well as modern education in concepts like transformational travel, Claire conducts tailored research and writing to help bring her clients' project visions to life. She has worked with travel businesses of all kinds, from travel clubs to ultra-high net worth trip planning companies. Claire's insights have been featured in outlets like The Washington Post and Authority magazine. We talked about all kinds of things to do with transformative travel and meaningful travel in particular. So let's get straight to the interview. Hi, Claire. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, of course. So just to start off with, please could you give our listeners just a little bit of background about you, what you do for work, and where in the world you are right now?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm based in Toronto, Canada. It's where I grew up. I am a freelance travel writer and researcher working under my brand, Your Travel Analyst. And I also do a lot of project work as well. So what I do is I work with travel businesses, and I aim to bridge the gap between the logistics of travel and the human experience. So I use a lot of research rooted in fields like psychology and art and history and science to really bring a well-rounded and creative aspect to the travel industry. So helping clients with various travel products like courses, books, itineraries, and things like that.
Great. I'm really intrigued about this because obviously I'm in this similar space. And I do courses and things like this, so I'm interested how it all works together for you. But first, I just wanted to say I have been to Toronto and I really liked it, only for a few days. But Toronto and Niagara Falls are the only places I've been to in Canada, so I need to see some other places. But I really enjoyed it when I went there.
I love it.
It's a really nice city. Yeah. Are you in the city itself?
I grew up in the city itself. I recently relocated just outside. But growing up in the city, it was great because it's such a multicultural place, as you probably experienced a little bit. But yeah, there's so much food diversity and things like that. So it's a great spot.
Yeah, great. Okay, so what started your love of travel? Were you always interested in it, or did something trigger your desire to see the world, or what happened there?
Yeah, for sure. So I was fortunate as a kid to go on a couple of family vacations where it required a flight. And I think a lot of the anticipation peaked around flying for me. So those early morning waits at the airport, heading off, leaving Toronto, which was often snowy or cold, and landing in maybe more of a tropical destination was always something really exciting and magical for me as a kid. And then as I got older, I had an opportunity to travel to Europe with my high school on a World War II themed trip through Western Europe. And that really drove home just the novelty and excitement and just how big the world was. So that was sort of what really triggered the interest in pursuing travel more seriously and more consistently. And also on a personal note, my grandma, who passed away this past August, she collected spoons from different parts of the world. So people would come back and bring her spoons. So she had these 2 racks, which I actually inherited. And when she passed, I kept the ones that were the most meaningful because I also added to her collection. So it's just, I think that there's such a rich storytelling and relationship aspect to travel that's just so meaningful, and people don't often take that into consideration, but it definitely makes it that much richer.
Oh, I love that. Do you collect anything from your travels? Is that something that you've sort of carried on, or?
Yeah, well, I have thought about continuing to collect spoons, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think more intentionally now about what sort of souvenirs I'm going to collect.
Yeah, I collect postcards from wherever I go just because they're quite easy to slip in your luggage. But I've recently started getting like a ring from like the main places I go, and because it's something you can wear and see and remind yourself every day of like the trip you went on and who you were with when you bought it and all that kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
like the idea of getting jewelry from places and making that more meaningful.
Yeah. I love that. I had that experience in Ireland. I got a Claddagh ring.
I have one of those.
You have one too? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fun to look at that and wear it, and you're kind of taken right back there. It's something about the sensory aspect of a
Mm.
souvenir. It just takes you right back to that experience.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something you can wear rather than just, gathering dust in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
happens with quite a few of the things I buy as well. um, I just want to mention you said you went to Europe with high school. That's quite a great high school trip.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty cool. Which countries did you go to?
Yeah, we went to Germany, Holland, France, and Belgium.
Nice. Did you have a favorite?
It's tough. Holland or the Netherlands was really cool. Belgium was very memorable because I remember we weren't supposed to stay there that long, but the tour guide said, "Oh, we're gonna surprise you guys with a full day in Brussels." So it's kind of that sort of surprise and delight factor was really exciting, and that was also a really beautiful city too. So it's every place I think has its own characteristics and its own, unique sort of charm and flavor.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so personally, why do you think travel can be so transformative? And how would you say travel has transformed you personally?
Yeah, wow, I love that question. Yeah, I think it's so multifaceted as far as the impact it has on ourselves. I think it can't not challenge you to sort of think outside the box and sort of exercise skills like problem solving and, thinking fast and also just being flexible and adaptable. In terms of our relationships, I think that it helps us create meaningful relationships with other people who travel. But I think it also can inspire people who don't travel or haven't traveled or have had sort of preconceptions about what travel means. So it can really help just by, having those conversations and telling stories about what you've done, I think can really have a ripple effect and inspire the people. I've heard that a lot over the years from friends and family, just say, "Oh, I'm so inspired by what you're doing." And I think it's just one of those things in which we know all about in travel coaching. It's just a mindset thing and sort of just thinking really hard about what you want and what would be meaningful to you when it comes to travel.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with the ripple effect thing. I mean, even me, like I can just see a few pictures of someone's trip and like they've sold it to me without even trying.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to go there. Like it's just so, especially with travel, like people come back with stories about their trip, but also about themselves. And you can maybe see how they've changed or how they've changed their perception or something. And it can really rub off on other people
Yeah,
so much more than I think other topics can.
absolutely.
Definitely. So this podcast is obviously all about travel transformation, and I know you're into this too, but you're also into meaningful travel. So can you tell us what the difference between meaningful travel and transformative travel is?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, language can feel really intimidating. And I think words like, transformational or intentional can feel really intense. And so I think a word like meaningful really allows people to kind of break down maybe a bigger goal, which could be transformational travel, into smaller, more manageable steps, because it kind of speaks to they're not necessarily having to be an end goal, meaningful travel. It's sort of like defining for yourself what does a thoughtful experience look like for you without sort of the noise of what the industry or social media is telling you it should look like.
Mm. And do you have any examples? Like, have you been on a particularly meaningful trip that you either intended to be meaningful or just that happened to be super meaningful at the end?
Yeah, it's funny because I think that because of the pandemic, so many of these words and these niches around meaningful and intentional and transformational travel have come about. I haven't, because a lot of my international travels were before the pandemic, I hadn't really thought about what that meant beforehand. So I think that things just kind of happened candidly, meaningful experiences. And I think that one soul experience wasn't 100% full of meaningful experiences, but I think that different pieces of it are highlights in my mind of what made it meaningful. So things like connecting with locals. So in Peru, I stayed in a homestay in Cacacoyo, And that was really meaningful, connecting with the local community, staying in this family's home and chatting with them. Even though there's a language barrier, there's something really powerful about that connection. Things like that. I think things like, being immersed in just beautiful scenery and really taking time for yourself to just absorb it, whether or not you need to do that intentionally. I think there are aspects of us, because we know that our vacations are so time limited. We do kind of really do try to make the most of it, right? We get a lot of FOMO, and I think that's sort of a fine line. I think there are just so many pieces of a meaningful experience that just kind of come up in your mind when you think of the highlights of a trip.
Definitely. And you mentioned Peru there, and homestay, was it, that you were at? How did that come about? How did you organize that?
Yeah, I traveled with G Adventures to Peru, and it was based around going to Machu Picchu. And one of the experiences they offer is connecting with the local community they're involved with, called Kakakoyo. And they support a women's weaving co-op that happens in that community. So that is sort of the gist of the experience. And you get to stay with the family, and your host mom is one of these women who does some of the yarn work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was truly, really cool.
That does sound really cool. And yeah, I went around Southeast Asia with G Adventures, although I think it was called Gap Adventures. It was a while ago now.
Yeah.
But we had like a Cambodian guy who was our tour guide taking us around for a month. And it makes such a difference, like having a local there. Like, obviously he knows where to go and the language and everything like that. But just, he took us to a local's house, and we had dinner there, and we had like an impromptu party on there, like outside their house and things like that. If you were traveling on your own and just staying in even hostels and things like that, you would never get that experience. So I think that's a really good idea to look into that kind of thing if you want to experience more local things.
Yeah. And I think that's also what's great about G Adventures is that they employ like local guides, where I think a lot of the time it's something we don't think about, but who are the people that are, guiding us and telling these stories? And sometimes they're people that are hired from other places, and it kind of changes the nature of the experience and the dynamic and the way in which information is being offered up.
Yeah, definitely. I would highly recommend. I haven't been on G Adventures for ages, but I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was definitely a month I will not forget, for all kinds of reasons. But anyway, so you mentioned the pandemic briefly before, and as we all know, the pandemic turned the travel industry on its head completely. So many companies either failed or they had to pivot. So many people also started viewing travel in a different way too. So did the pandemic change the way you thought about travel, or did it change what you did in your career, or like how did it affect you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a long time before the pandemic, I really struggled with figuring out what it is I wanted to do in the travel industry. There were things that didn't really resonate with me, like being a travel agent or a tour operator or working in a hotel. Those kind of things didn't really appeal to me, and I kind of wasn't sure what I was going to do. I knew that I had specific skills like writing and research and things like that, and project specialties, but I was also really craving a lot of creative freedom. And so I knew I needed to find a role that would kind of honor both of those things. And I think that in a way, the pandemic really brought about this opportunity for us to reflect as a whole on what was meaningful for us in our careers and in travel. And when it came to working in travel, for me, I kind of had this simultaneous opportunity to both work towards and reflect on what I wanted to do for my career and what I wanted to do as a traveler going forward. And so I think connecting with a lot of thought leaders and industry disruptors in the travel space who said, travel can look a lot better than how it looks now. We can get a lot more creative and thoughtful with how we plan trips and how we look at the industry. I think that really was a turning point for me, because it really gave me the courage and the aha moment to say, okay, there are ways we can do these things differently and really change the industry for the better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously the pandemic was and is a terrible thing, but it gave us the opportunity to step back, I think outside the box in all kinds of different areas of our lives.
Yeah.
Like for me, I like realized I wanted to make travel more of a priority, and I'd been meaning to do the digital nomad thing for years and I never got around to it. And then, not being able to leave the country at all, it really brings home how much you miss it and how much for me, how much I wanted to pursue that lifestyle. So it definitely did that for me. And then obviously I changed my career completely as well to be in the travel space. So it definitely, without that time to sort of stop and pause and think and reflect, I don't think I would have maybe made that decision, at least not for a few years anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah.
There was some sort of statistic like that. I think I heard last year that said that the travel industry in the span of 2 years has been catapulted, like in terms of progress, it's been catapulted like 10 years ahead.
Wow.
Yeah. So which is crazy to think. Yeah.
I can definitely understand why though.
Yeah.
Especially after all the lockdowns. Yeah.
I just want to interrupt this awesome podcast episode for a moment to tell you about Write Your Life, the ultimate life hack for achieving your dreams by Jessica Grace Coleman, a book that teaches you how to design your dream life and then go live it. Life is what you make it. Life is what you write it to be. And you can write whatever you want. Let me show you how. The Write Your Life method gives you all the tools and techniques you need to identify your ambitions, plan your goals, and ultimately achieve all your wildest dreams, all while having fun and getting creative. And you don't need to be a writer to benefit from the Write Your Life method. This book can help anyone, anywhere design their ultimate dream lifestyle. Get it now from Amazon or head to www.traveltransformationcoach.com/books. You'll also get a digital copy completely free when you sign up to the Flip the Script Academy at traveltransformationcoach.com/academy, where we teach you that life is short. So let's make sure it's nothing short of amazing. And now let's get back to the Travel Transformation Podcast.
Okay, so I know you're working with Travel with Meaning podcast host Mike Scheibel on a new course.
Yep.
And I love his podcast too, by the way. Highly recommend it for anyone out there. So can you tell me a bit about this and what's involved?
Yeah, for sure. So Mike has hosted the Travel with Meaning podcast for a few years now. He's had hundreds of conversations with all different sorts of travelers, from Hollywood reporters to athletes to chefs to musicians. And despite these people coming from all sorts of different backgrounds and different travel experiences, he's sort of started to notice these common themes coming up in conversations and stories he was hearing from these people. And he kind of had this idea to string these common themes together into a course that would address sort of ultimately the principles of meaningful travel. So he's come up with 6 principles. And the idea is that this is a self-paced course, a combination of questions and video. And it really just invites travelers and travel professionals into this reflective, thoughtful space of considering their own experiences and how they can, use the principles to create more thoughtful and meaningful travel experiences for themselves and their businesses going forward.
And how are you involved with this? Is he one of your clients, or how does that work?
We're sort of working in a partnership capacity. So we're working really collaboratively on things like collateral and marketing and kind of figuring out who we want to get on board to help us promote it and support the course. So it's been a really great experience in terms of just supporting him on this really incredible idea.
Nice. So have you known him for a while, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So him and I actually met through the Transformational Travel Council's Transformational Travel Design Program back in the spring of 2021. So that's how we met initially. And then we got in contact some months later, and he told me about this idea, and I thought, I'm on board.
Wow, that's really cool. It just shows the power of connections and,
oh yeah,
just meeting someone randomly in a course or a conference or something and what it can lead to. That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that. Networking and community and all that stuff has really shaped my business for sure.
Okay, so looking on your website, and you mentioned this before, you offer quite a few different services such as training and consulting. Could you briefly explain these services, what you do, and if people are interested, how they can find out more?
Yeah. So I work in a B2B capacity, business to business. I don't work with consumers or the public directly, but I work with travel businesses who are really looking to sort of refine and elevate their services in a meaningful way. So whether those are things that are already existing, like itineraries, I can work with them in a consultancy capacity and talk about how we can inject more meaningful and transformational strategies into their existing itineraries. I also do a lot of project-based work. So if you're a business owner and you're thinking about, you've had ideas for books or courses or other sort of projects or digital products you wanted to pursue, we can talk about how I can help you in supporting you through the research and writing phase of creating those products.
That's really cool. How did you get into that area? Like, were you working with businesses before in other capacities, or I'm just really intrigued how it all came about?
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I was really inspired through work I was doing with a freelance client I had a couple of years ago. He's still a long-term client of mine. And he owns a luxury travel company in the UK. And he's really big on industry disruption and how we can think more creatively about travel. So one of the assignments I had with him was doing a lot of research and writing for a chapter of a book he was writing. And the chapter theme was on how we can travel without leaving our homes. So kind of just really honing in on that mindset work and fostering that sense of curiosity and adventure. And those have definitely been pillars that I've taken into my business.
Nice. So you actually help with the content creation aspect of it.
Yeah, it was really, super intriguing. And it's, again, one of those things where it's like an aha moment. It's like, yes, this is how I've always felt about travel. And finally, now it's getting put into words and articulated.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we're both part of the Travel Coach Network, run by Sahara Rose DeVore. When did you become a part of this network? And had you heard of travel coaching before? Because I hadn't at all. I hadn't heard of it as a thing at all.
Yeah, I hadn't.
So did you know that you wanted to incorporate travel coaching into what you do? Or was it just something you stumbled upon and thought, oh, that's pretty cool? That's pretty much what I did.
Yeah, I was introduced to the Travel Coach Network from someone I actually met through the Transformational Travel Council as well, Marcy, if she listens. Marcy introduced me to the Travel Coach Network, and she said, hey, I think, you would really resonate with a lot of what goes on in this community. And I joined and got connected with Sahara. Her and I had like a consultancy call. And I eventually decided to take the Travel Coach certification program because I was really feeling like I was at a point where I needed more support and guidance in my business. And I also was really craving a sense of community. And so I started kind of getting more involved in it and showing up consistently, asking questions. And actually, just this past October, I started working with Sahara as a client. So she's a client of mine, and I work as the Travel Coach Network's virtual assistant and brand manager.
Nice.
So it's been a really cool full circle experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I hadn't heard of travel coaching before. Yeah, it's interesting. But it's one of those things where I think a lot of the times there's so much noise in the digital product space generally that it can feel hard to kind of decipher what you resonate with. But I think ultimately what it came down to in this case was I read a lot of Sahara's copy and I really resonated with her story. And I think we have a lot of parallels in our stories. So I think that ultimately was a big factor in me deciding to participate in the Travel Coach Network.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how she does all the business side of things as well. It's not just coaching, it's how to build a business. It's all the mindset stuff, which is so important.
Yeah.
And like you say, the community is a huge part of it. Like just knowing there are other people doing similar things to you that you can ask for help or ask for questions or ask to be on someone's podcast or, whatever it is. It's just, it makes such a difference. Because the work I was doing before, I didn't really have an online community or in real life community. And you just sort of feel like you're sort of on your own doing stuff. You don't know what direction to go in. You don't know if anything you're doing is right or, you start second guessing yourself, all that kind of stuff. So it's so important to have a community like that. So
absolutely,
it's really cool. Okay, so you mentioned Peru before, and before this, I did ask you I know it's a really hard thing to answer, but where your 3 favorite places that you've traveled to are, and you said Peru, Italy, and New Zealand. So we've mentioned Peru. Why is Italy and why is New Zealand so special to you?
Yeah, I think Italy. When I went to Italy, it was at a really cool time in my life where I had just finished this Kentucky tour through the UK and Ireland, actually. And I went off and backpacked on my own with a friend for 10 days in Italy. And I think there were so many factors that made that experience really memorable for me. And I think one of them is just that independence. I was 18. And I think just having that opportunity to travel on your own and navigate and create an itinerary yourself was really special. The architecture in Italy is just beautiful. And the food obviously was super incredible as well. In New Zealand, the scenery in New Zealand was like nothing else I'd ever experienced. It was beautiful, just the mountains, especially the South Island. If you've ever been, it's just stunning.
I actually haven't. I've only been to the North Island and then I ran out of time and had to leave. And I'm really annoyed because I really wanted to go to the South Island. So I'll have to go back.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely worth it.
Did you do any of the Hobbit stuff?
I didn't, but my friend that I was traveling with, she came over. I was living in Australia at the time and we went over to New Zealand together. And she flew from Canada and she did the Hobbit stuff. I did not. I was kind of more interested in one of the like adrenaline-ish experiences. So a lot of them were super expensive. It's a very expensive country, but we did manage to go whitewater rafting and that was epic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, super cool.
Nice. And that was on the South Island. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. I'm not a massive Lord of the Rings fan or anything, but I've always thought Hobbiton looks so cute, and I really would like to go there.
Yeah, it does for sure.
Which countries or places do you still have on your travel bucket list? I always ask people this because I like getting ideas for places to go.
Yeah. Internationally, probably India has been on my list. I think it would be unlike anywhere I've ever been. And I really love Indian food, so I think it'd be incredible. Going back to Europe, probably, I know Croatia's been really popular. I think Croatia would be incredible. Costa Rica. I've been focusing now, I think, a lot on sort of North America travel. I'm actually going to San Francisco soon. So I think taking advantage of being close, like Toronto to the US, has been something I've been focusing on, especially kind of easing back into the post-pandemic travels. So yeah, I mean, the list is really endless, right? But really thinking about where you're drawn to, yeah, is a practice for sure.
That's the thing. And the more you travel and the more people you meet from different places, the more your list grows.
Yeah.
And like I'm going to South Africa a week tomorrow for 2 months. And that, like, I've always thought it looks like a beautiful place and I would like to go, but it wasn't really on my initial list, like to go. But then I met my friend Irene in Spain, and along with like some other people, and yeah, she was like, you need to come visit me. And I was like, okay. And like that would not have happened if I hadn't have met her. And there's several of us who were in Spain who were going to like hang out and work and stuff there. So
I love that.
That's what I love about travel.
Yeah.
Like it was not really on my radar of somewhere to go. And yeah,
that happened to me as well. Yeah, that's what makes it so special. People make it so special because they really can shape your experiences and your decisions of where to go next.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm all about having adventures and incredible experiences when traveling, but I know it can be hard when you go on these amazing trips and then come back to your usual mundane, boring, sometimes routine. So how can we make sure we don't lose this sense of adventure that we gain while we're traveling? And how can we incorporate an adventurous mindset in our day-to-day lives?
I love this topic because I think it is so important, especially like, as you said, we kind of can experience this post-trip blues phenomenon. And so when we get home, I think it's so important to kind of keep up that feeling of adventure and curiosity. And I think there are a lot of ways we can do that. There's actually a concept called micro adventures. And this is the idea that when we change things up in our routine or we incorporate, low cost, accessible things that just shake up the norm for us, it can be really fun and really trigger that sense of adventure. So things like camping out in your own backyard or driving to a new neighborhood that you haven't explored and exploring it without technology, maybe a paper map. Maybe it could be as simple as trying a new restaurant, a cuisine that you've never tried before in your city. It can be these little things, or even taking a different route to work just to kind of shake up the day to day and keep things interesting. Because I think that when people think of travel, they think of these grandiose international trips, but I think that there are so many ways to incorporate the skills and the mindset and the way we do things in travel and incorporate those in our day-to-day lives.
Definitely. I love that. I totally agree. I think you can go half an hour down the road to somewhere new, do something new, but maybe on your own, and it can generate similar feelings of adventure and excitement. And, just like you say, shaking things up.
Yeah.
It gets you out of your usual routine, which is what makes everyone feel a bit after travel, I think. Like they're like, oh, now it's just back to the same old, and it doesn't have to be.
For sure.
Yeah. And definitely the same thing about your home country as well. Like I spent this summer zapping all up and down England and Wales and visiting places I'd never been to that have been on my list for ages, but when they're only a few hours away, you don't always get around to doing them because, like you say, you want to go on holiday and you want to jump on a plane somewhere, but it doesn't have to be that. You can get in your car, drive for an hour and be somewhere totally different. And I saw so many places this summer, probably more than I have in like 10 years, like, the past 10 years.
You're lucky that you can zip up and down the country. And we got this big sprawling. If I drove 12 hours north, I'd still be in Ontario.
Yeah, I'm guessing zipping around is less of a thing in Canada.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too far.
But you do have amazing scenery and all that stuff. I really do want to explore more of Canada. Have you explored much of Canada in general, or?
Yeah, I haven't done too much, surprisingly. I've been over to Quebec, which is an incredible place for those of us who live in North America. We always appreciate like European flair, and Quebec is kind of like stepping into Europe for us with cobblestone streets and people speaking French, and It's a really magical place. I have also been to the West Coast, to British Columbia, so Vancouver and places like that. That's also a great spot, completely different vibe to the east. And then if you go further east past Quebec, I haven't been out that far east yet, but that also looks amazing. So the Maritimes with sort of like that Irish vibe, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, those kinds of places. So it's really cool how across the country, it's probably similar in England, but across the country, you can have such vast experiences depending on where you go.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got so many places on my list in Canada. I really want to go to Banff National Park in that area. It looks so beautiful. Every time I see a film that's set there, I'm just like, oh, that can't be real. Like,
I know. Yeah, it does look unreal for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so but I talk quite a lot about creating magical movie moments when you're on the road, and I think you can create them to a certain extent, but they often obviously happen organically, and it's when you experience a moment that is just like a scene from a movie. Like everything seems incredible. It's either the scenery or the people you're with, or there's like a song playing or something, and you just feel like it could be out of a film, and you just feel content or relaxed, or you're not worrying about normal life or anything like that. Have you ever had one of those moments when traveling?
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that. To be honest, I think that my entire year of living abroad in Australia was a movie.
Oh, wow.
It was like a movie, because I think that when you slow travel, or if you just get to spend an extended period of time somewhere, I think you just naturally fall into a rhythm of like living a life there. And it's almost like, in a way, trying a different life on for size, even though it's temporary. And so I think it's funny that you say that, because my favorite travel quote is by a social psychologist called Jamie Kurtz, and she says that travel is life in miniature. And so it's funny, and there is an aspect of that where it's not necessarily glamorized, but it really does feel like you're living in a movie, because even though you face sort of these trials and these obstacles, it's like the focus and the goal of wanting to be there and the desire to be traveling is greater than any of those obstacles. So yeah, I would definitely say just the entirety of my year abroad in Australia. And I think definitely things like music and taking the time to reflect. I lived in Sydney, and I would often go down to the beach and listen to music and just kind of stare out at the ocean. And that to me was a very grounding experience, and sort of just soaking that all in was very movie-like.
That's so cool. Did you travel around much during that year?
Yeah, I did a little bit. I lived in Melbourne for 7 months, and then I lived in Sydney for 4 months. And I did the Great Ocean Road from Melbourne to Adelaide. I went up the coast a couple times up to Cairns, and then did the Great Barrier Reef and the Whitsundays. So I did a little bit, but not too much. I kind of stayed put, which was actually kind of nice because I could meet people and form community.
And again, you can't just zip around in Australia.
Yeah.
It takes some time. Definitely.
Gotta have deep pockets too. Yeah.
When was that? Was that recently or?
No, that was 2015.
Right.
Yeah. It's a little bit ago. Yeah.
Nice. And would you ever consider doing something like that again now, like staying somewhere for a lengthy amount of time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that as you get older, your travel preferences change. If I would, as far as living abroad again, I don't know. I think I'm kind of a little bit past my hostel days. I think that in a way, the pandemic, I don't know if that's put a little bit of angst in me around staying in a hostel, but I would consider maybe not for a year, but maybe living somewhere for a few months at a time or something like that. I think that when you feel drawn to a place and it just works, it kind of just fits with your life circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been staying in co-livings, but I am definitely over the hostel days.
Yeah. those 16 bedrooms. No, I can't do that.
I can't believe I ever even stayed in like a 16-bed dorm, like people constantly coming and going all through the night, and like just how you just didn't sleep. Oh, it's just no, couldn't.
I know. And when you're away from it for years, right? You think about it now and you're like, how did I do that? Like, how did that?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's such a fun, interesting, like phenomenon. Like the experience of sleeping in a room with strangers is so interesting.
Yeah. And especially that many strangers in one room. It's a weird thing when you think about it.
It gives the experience character though. It makes it memorable.
Yes, exactly. Okay, great. So is there anything else you'd like to mention or talk about or promote before we go?
Yeah, well, I guess if people are interested, if there's any businesses that are interested in my services, you can get in touch with me via the contact page on my website, which is yourtravelanalyst.com. I also am active on LinkedIn, just my personal page, Claire Burt, and I share stuff to my Your Travel Analyst LinkedIn business page as well. On Instagram, I'm at Your Travel Analyst. And if there are those of you who are starting a travel business, or you're in a travel business, or you're a solo travel entrepreneur looking for more support, I actually do a virtual co-working group on Facebook. It's called a Virtual Co-working and Happy Hour Hub for Travel Professionals. That's every other Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
That sounds pretty good, actually. I'm like, oh.
You should join it, please.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll put those links in the show notes as well. So if you're interested, then you can just go there and click on the links. So great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It was great to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, anyone out there, please check out the show notes for the links. And you can tag me on Instagram at Travel Transformation Coach and Claire at Your Travel Analyst.
Yep.
If you enjoyed this episode, if you got something useful from it, then please share and tag us. That'd be really cool. Okay, thank you very much, Claire. And until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Travel Transformation Podcast with me, Jessica Grace Coleman. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review, and spread the word if you have friends or family who also want to transform through travel. For a chance of winning one of my books in ebook form, please review this podcast on Apple Podcasts and send a screenshot or just your name to info@traveltransformationcoach.com or at Travel Transformation Coach on Instagram. I'll be picking a new winner each month, and you can choose between any of my non-fiction titles, including Write Your Life, Write Your Year, and Intentional Travel Transformation. You can find out more about me at traveltransformationcoach.com, where you can also get your free travel transformation guide. And until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye.